Tracey Field. I'm the Estates Manager for Bishop Chadwick Catholic Education Trust, based in the North East, responsible for 30 schools, 25 primary and 5 secondary. We have an enormous team of 2, myself and an assistant estates manager, managing everything estates across the trust. So yeah, a real challenging role, but full of we get a lot of pleasure, enjoyment out of what we do, and seeing the difference we make to students, etc. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, it's really good. And to be honest, you're our first ever guest for education, so on constructing excellence. So,
Okay.
I think with what constructing excellence is, it's that it's sharing best practice within the construction industry. Usually it's aimed at like contractors, sharing their best practice, but we don't always hear it from a client side.
Hmm.
So, we've had some real good people on like councils and things, but we've never had it from an education establishment. So it's going to be really good to get your insights into your view of what you think of construction, how
Okay.
you think it can be managed, how it is managed, and consultants, like me, people like me, and give an honest assessment on,
Hmm.
what we do. But just tell us a little bit more about your stock. In fact, before we do that, a little bit more about yourself, because you have got a building surveying background. Is that correct? So
I have.
take
So
us back.
I am.
Take it back to your journey of how you got into the
Okay.
world of construction.
Okay, so I started many years ago. I actually started in a call centre, and then shadowing maintenance staff because I knew what I wanted to do, and just studied for the last 25 plus years. I recently got my fellowship with the Chartered Institute of Builders, so I'm really pleased about that. But I've got a really varied background. So I've worked local authority, I've worked private estates, such as for the Duke of Bedford at Woburn Abbey. I've worked for the royal household. I've worked overseas in the Falkland Islands, in Lagos, in Nigeria. So doing all sorts of things, developing islands, building airport runways, to just your normal installing bathrooms, kitchens, and upgrades in generally in property. So this is actually my very first role in education. So I've been here about 3.5 years now, and it is a steep learning curve,
Yeah.
education sector generally, and managing that. But it's one I really enjoy. Actually, just very different to what I've done. But I think all the work that I've done previously and all the roles that I've had have all led to this point to be able to merge them in, to be able to do the role that I do now. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So you've done quite a bit then to get to education. So when you started, like, so what I see with education, especially, so there's a lot of property.
Hmm.
It's a property and assets, and the focus of these schools isn't always the building; it's the education part. How do we teach the
Hmm.
kids? So when you came into this type of setting, was it a completely different feel of what was priority in terms of you were coming in with a let's get your buildings right, and they're thinking, no, I want to teach the kid. Just tell us about what that was like when you first came in.
100% agree with you there. My argument is always, without a building that is safe, compliant, fit for purpose, there will be no education. So as much as it's lovely to do all the nice things in a school and lovely furniture, all the books, and obviously essential, if we don't get the building right and make sure that it's fit for purpose and safe for our students, then schools will be closed. There's no two ways about that. So my job is to make sure that we use our very small resources the best we can, to ensure that our properties are fit for purpose. And that's really hard with an aging estates, like most multi-academy trusts or schools in general. They're very old buildings, lack of maintenance, so we've got a huge backlog in just general day-to-day repairs, let alone capital spend. And then when they come over to us, I mean, for us, for in a multi-academy trust, when we've taken these schools on, they have been in real poor condition. So roof works, these aren't cheap, these things to do. So it is really hard to manage the expectations of the nice to haves against the absolutely essential to stop our buildings from closing, and to make sure we maintain that education.
Yeah, for sure. And with do you think then the view is so? How many schools did you say you've got?
So we've got 30, 25 primary and
Right.
5 secondary.
Okay, so that many schools, and there's two of you managing it. Does it feel like you're
Hmm.
constant? It must feel like you're not dropping the ball, but you must feel like it must be almost impossible to keep up to date with what's happening.
It is hard. So, I mean, even just keeping up to date with legislation is hard, let alone with keeping up to date with what our buildings need. I mean, for me, if I could have stopped the clock when I joined, so when I joined, there was nothing in place as such. There'd been no estates manager in post beforehand, and the trust grew rapidly. So having asset information was crucial. We didn't have full asset information then. It was from due diligence. It was from, information I'd collected in, with my background, anecdotal information. So for the first year and a half, 2 years, that's what our plans were from.
Yeah,
But it's obviously evident very soon that the repairs we were doing should have been capital planned repairs, but they end up being emergency repairs because we didn't know about them beforehand, didn't have that stock information to plan well. So, I mean, my advice to anybody would be whatever you decide to spend your money on, the first thing you should do is get a full asset condition surveys on all your buildings. And that's not just fabric, which I think most people get the fabric stuff, your shell of your building, your roof and windows and whatnot. But actually, the mechanical and electrical is the biggest risk for
yeah,
us, with boiler failures, really old pipe work, even just in terms of sustainability and managing energy in our buildings. Everything is so old, and when it fails, it's a knee-jerk reaction to have to fix it there and then, rather than if we had that asset information at the very beginning. Lots of reasons why we didn't. um, we could have planned it better, and maybe you put in better solutions rather than having to go with what's available in the short time scale that you've got to stop a school from closing. Like for example, if there's no heating in the winter, you've got to do a really quick turnaround. So if we had asset information, and this is where consultants come in, there's lots around. I mean, I'd gladly recommend any, but if anyone wants to speak to me, I'd gladly tell them who we've used and the type of information that we've got. Depends on what you want and what you want to spend. But I
yeah.
think, investing that money to start will save you long term. Certainly not doing things twice over or doing things one way and then you've got to go and retrofit something after to improve it. So
Yeah.
asset information is vital, absolutely vital.
And that's how you handle it. When there's two of you looking after that many
Mm,
schools, you've got to have your strategies that absolutely got to be spot on, done it.
yeah.
Which I guess then really obviously from a consultancy point of view, we sit on this side of the fence, and it's all right then putting a plan in place, but then you've got a budget, which your budget's in schools. So just talk
Hmm.
to us about how budgets are allocated in schools, just for. So is it per pupil or is it per school or how does it work?
Yeah, so our budgets, we fall under the SCA, so school condition allocation funding, which is allocated annually and it is on a per pupil basis. To me, it's absolute nonsense. Whether a school has got, up to capacity of 400 children, or it's not and it's got 200, the building still needs the same maintenance. It doesn't need any less because it's got any less pupils. So that to me is a failure in the allocation to
That's a
start with.
very
But
good point.
you
I've
know,
never thought of that. That's a really good point. If you
mm,
had one child,
mm,
you'd still need the roof fixing. So you've got
100%. Yeah,
£15 to fix the roof with. Is this
yeah.
is this something that this method then? Where's that method come from? Do we
It is,
know?
is government led, so this is where all our funding comes from. There's
Okay.
other schools that if they're not the same numbers as likes of us with 30 schools will
Yeah.
fall under SIF funding, so they have to bid. But I mean, they need to know what they're doing then well in advance. Hope they get the funding, and then plan ahead accordingly. And like I say, even trying to do that, if you haven't got asset information and understanding what your forward maintenance looks like, what you need to do to keep those buildings ticking over,
Yeah.
how can you possibly even put a bid in? And even bid writing is not easy. That's not a straightforward task of how things have to be put. There's so many people, requesting this funding. I mean, don't get me started on the carbon reduction funding that's offered by the government. It's open to every public sector. Schools generally, especially if they're standalone schools, don't have the staff in place with the expertise of knowing all the information that's required, putting all the bid together. And so the likes of, I hate to say it, but the NHS Trust probably gets a lot of it because they've got teams that this is all they do. Whereas the likes of us in our schools, we're wearing multiple hats. So having I go back to consultants again, they are a lifeline and well worth, investing in to be able to get what you need for your schools. I don't want to sound like I'm plugging consultants here, but I just think you can't wear every hat. You can't be an expert in every area. So it's knowing who you should be speaking to, how they can support you, and invest in what you need to be able to get the maintenance, and the funds in for your schools.
Yeah.
It's a hard battle of trying to manage what limited resources you've got to um, uh, carry out capital repairs against using some of that to actually understand, well, what do we need? Who could write a bid for me? That type of thing. It is hard.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. I think sometimes people, and the reason I ask you for that question is, how is this, who makes up the rules of funding? You get a lot of people that have no idea about schools or how they work or where the money
Mm,
comes from or why not fixing the windows, why not fixing the roof. So it's government led. And that's why I think when it comes round to elections, that can have such a huge impact on schools because you're given a number per
definitely.
pupil led by government. And hopefully then people that are listening that that don't understand their funding for schools, it's that we are led by a government as well, and they're going to give you whatever.
Hmm.
Obviously, with we're not. It's not a political podcast, but hopefully with Labour, we'd like to think that we would get a little bit more, but you never know. It's a different Labour to
We
what it
we
once
just don't
was.
know.
Um, but so talking about being prepared and everything like that, and then you're talking about consultants. So the pot's thin. The pot is super thin. And you're then asked to basically go, and I spoke about this at my latest presentation, didn't I, about Schools Northeast.
You
How
did.
do you spread that money? And how do you spread it in a way that you can fund people? Because we know schools that literally keep consultants at an arm length. Because look, let's be
Hmm.
real, fees can be heavy. You can take £100,000 out of your pot before you've even got started. And that then leaves you with £900,000. That £100,000 could fix a whole new roof. And it's
It's
such a
true.
fine balancing act to get that right. Um, when you
I,
join
I
then,
think
did
though,
you
Dan.
know that?
Sorry,
That's all right.
sorry. I was just going to say. So I think the it is a huge chunk out of your pot. No two ways about it. However, you're potentially repairing for those who scream the loudest, or we've got 30 schools, as I've said before, but not all of them will say that they've got a problem. They're so used to not having things repaired that now they're part of a multi-academy trust. Sometimes perhaps forget that they can now reach into this central pot that we have. So we've got schools that unless you prioritize, yourself and do it fairly, and I do have a matrix for doing that. I use the GEMS guidance, so the Good
Okay,
Estate
yeah, yeah.
Management for Schools. So it is, we take consideration of compliance, health and safety, operational. Is a school going to close? What are those risks? And then almost come out with a score at the end that then puts these things into a priority. And no doubt, when we've got those priorities at the end for year one, we still haven't got enough money for those. So then you have to prioritize down again. But it's done in a fair way, certainly at our trust. It's done in a fair way. So there will be schools that one year, one school, we've got 40 odd projects running this summer. We haven't got 40 schools, obviously. So, we've got some schools with multiple projects going on. But that just means that we're bringing them all up to a standard where we can manage them going forward. So it is hard to do it and do it without people, schools thinking, well, that school's always getting it and I'm getting nothing. I mean, it is hard too. We've got two schools currently in the school rebuilding program. We've got another four that are in the school rebuilding program. So we've got six schools in total. But even that itself is a long process. So you
Yeah.
can't say, well, you're being rebuilt, we're not going to do any work now. You still then, need that support of saying, well, what's the essential stuff that will get me ticking over for the next few years? Saying, because these two schools that are currently, they're quite a way ahead, but we've been 18 months in feasibility and procurement. That's a long time. We haven't even got spade in the ground yet. Do you know what I mean? So you've still got to manage things failing in that time. So even just to get to the build part could be 5, 6 years. You can't just say, well, the school's being rebuilt, we won't do anything. But it's important then to have that whole rounded view of, well, okay, what can we do just to almost put a plaster over it for now and make sure our resources are spent in the right places for the schools that aren't being rebuilt and their roofs do still now have to last another 40 years,
Yeah.
of how that goes. So it is a juggling act. There's no two ways about it.
It sounds like so you're quite an exception, I think, in the way that you think about strategy and estates, and you've actually got it in a real good place, haven't you? It sounds like.
Yes, well,
And
I wouldn't say I'm
then,
exception, but I mean, I've
of
I've worked
course,
really hard.
it works well. You do well. And then on the flip side, you've got caretakers, which have just promoted to estate managers, and all of a
Yep,
sudden they go, "Will you now look after our entire estates?" And there's no kind of is there any training for schools and estate managements like what you're doing is it's ultimately advanced strategic planning, yet a lot
yep.
of estates team don't have that. They're just taught to is that something that they are missing? You'll have to um, kind of update me on this, but is there platforms in the schools that you can learn to do strategic planning, estate planning?
So so the best, if you are a school where your business manager is ultimately managing your pot. So business managers often tend to come from a finance background, I guess, and this is where you don't always have the building knowledge, to understand just what the impact is. So there's nothing worse than, I don't know, a downpipe constantly dripping and it's left to such a point that we're replacing everything, all the rainwater goods, rather than just actually fixing a joint. And this comes down to education for caretakers. Some have gone from, I don't know, being a cleaning supervisor to then being a caretaker, and the role has changed so much over the years from what a traditional caretaker would be. And the same with a business manager. I mean, I don't know their job inside out, but for sure they have to manage the works that go on a school. And how can you do that? One, if you don't have a building background, I think is really difficult then to understand why you need it, what the impact is if it isn't done. And then two, when you've got such a small amount of money and you are going to have to bid to get that, if you're lone working like that in a school with just a business manager, how are you supposed to put a bid together without somebody helping you? It's just, so the GEMS guidance is good as a starting point for anybody coming into estates. Is the first thing you should be reading is the good estate management of schools, but it's not the be all and end all of it. Regarding training, I don't know of any training specifically aimed at business managers, caretakers to upskill, as such. Maybe I should plug my little book that I'm going to be that's coming soon
Okay.
of
Yeah,
how to
absolutely.
manage your estate. Woohoo!
Yeah, yeah,
For us, I was like, I mean, I've said to you before, when I started, I wish there was a guide that said to estate managers, or people managing a school estate, not even across a school of 30, of what should I be doing? What are my priorities? How should I be managing that? And what resources are there out there? You can't just say, and I keep saying it, you can't do this alone. So Martin and I, team of two for our school. We have he comes from a mechanical background. I've got the building fabric background, and I've got the finance side and whatnot. But there's no way we could know all of this stuff. There's subject matter experts out there,
yeah.
and you need to lean on them. Don't try and do it on your own. I don't think you're set to fail. You're just wasting money, in my view.
No, absolutely. It's right. It's absolutely right. It's just really interesting to know. I've worked with schools for well, yeah, 10 years plus now. Just being involved, especially on roofing. 8 years. Obviously,
Mm,
majority of my work was education, just because of how many flat roofs are on schools. And coming on that side of things, we were always instructed by the consultant to come along to do the roof survey. And it's only recently that I've started to dig a little bit deeper under the surface to see actually how challenging it is. It isn't about getting the roof on, it's about
mm,
how you can take that pot of money and best use it. And there's still such you have one half doing it this way and one half doing that way. And I think that's why we've tried to bring, obviously, we've got this new group which we're trying to create, which is to bring people together
yep,
because people hold so much good info in their head, like for you to sit in a room with somebody else. And that's why we're trying to create these round table sessions because there's going to be
yep,
somebody going, I'm really struggling. I don't know where to start. Which takes me on to just the next part. Now, the construction industry is being battered with sustainability, We have to be
Yep.
seen to be sustainable, and that we are doing everything under the sun. And I know schools are also in the same position, or you're being
Hmm.
challenged to. Just want to talk to us a bit more about your sustainability goals, what they look like, and what you've been tasked with as an education industry.
Well, we've the Department for Education have said that all education settings are to have a green climate action plan and a nominated sustainability lead for 2025. Um, Probably like many other establishments, there's been promises of further information and guidance for that for probably 18 months now, and it's still not out. So we're in the middle of 2024 here, and and here we are heading towards that. So that alone is hard, of not having some guidance of where to go. So you are almost starting from scratch on your own. And I mean, the biggest thing to make instant improvements is behavioural, isn't it? So we need that education in schools, and I think young people are much better at that than my generation, perhaps, of understanding, whether that's waste streams, turning lights on or off. But there's so much more we can do, and I know you've had Bob on here before from Biodiversity UK, but for me, that sustainability piece goes hand in hand with the biodiversity piece.
Yeah,
You can't have one without the other. But I think in terms of our estates, and ensuring that we reduce our energy, our carbon footprint, etc. This is where it comes back to again to you have to have the information. You need the right people. So we engage with energy professionals. It's not an area of strength of mine. I've done sustainability study, but I'm not an SME on that at all. It's like monitoring what we use, how we can improve. So you need, but there are grants and things available for that. Even, I don't know, EV chargers, for example, is one I'm looking at. There's government funding for that for education sectors. Maybe not everybody knows these things, so it may be useful, I think, within our forums, perhaps, to share who knows what's coming out next or what's available, just to make sure that, because you do miss things. It's easily missed, the bulletins that come out. But I think for us, it's so we've had decarbonisation audits and reports. An investment it was. There's no two ways about it. It wasn't a cheap audit to carry out across all our schools, but the information is invaluable to be able to guide us as to where are the key areas we should be focusing. And some of them are simple fixes, better windows, BMS systems, it's all of these things. But it also then about your PVs, and and other methods in there. So it comes back again to information is key. You
yeah,
can't do what you need to do. But I just want to backtrack a little bit on consultants of getting that information, and and using them to gather that. I think it also comes with, when you're managing the projects and the works, that's not a straightforward task. We have so many rules and regulations to follow. CDM, you're probably you're aware of, Building Safety Act, and you can't do that saying we've got 40 projects running this summer. There's no way, myself and Martin can do all of those, ensuring that we follow all the regulations that are required from the health from the HSE. So I think it's again making sure that when you're managing your estate and you're getting this information, that and you know what you want to do, having the right people to support you to actually deliver that, and you get what you're expecting at the end. You can't go around a school and say, I want this done, this done, this done. You need a thorough scope, you need a thorough specification, and and you need the support of consultants to be able to get that sometimes, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So it's having the data, because if you have the data, it'll make your sustainability journey a lot
Yeah.
easier. Do you know, I was dealing with a school about 4 years ago, and it was roofing. Went up on the roof. Must have been about 2,000 square meters of roofing, and we were really keen on solar panels, because
Hmm.
they were trying to get ahead of the game. And they said, right, we've got a grant, we've got some money, we can get all these solar panels put up. And they said, oh, can you just do us a quick roof survey? So I went up, and there was no insulation on the
Hmm.
roof. And I'm like, right, that's fine. Just get the. And I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, I can't believe we're going to do this. They're about
Yeah.
to invest. I'll get a grant for about £100,000 of solar panels on a roof with no
Yeah.
insulation. And it was such
Everything's
a
going
shock.
out
It
anyway.
was on the roof anyway. So I sat down. I said, and I think it was at that moment I was like, wow, like there's a lot of educating still to be done here. That I think like on one hand they don't want to. A lot of people like don't want to bring, especially consultants in because I think they're fearful of the fees and it is that turning round, and it's like we do it as well. If you look at home, it's things like cars and MOTs and getting a date for yourself. But when it comes to, it's such a challenge, and I think having a black book, a little book,
Mm,
Tracy, to tell
100%.
people, here's a start. Do you know when we were in the meeting with Mark Midgley and he said, what
Yeah.
would you do if you could start again?
Yep.
It
We
would be
said
that
that.
with you. It would be get all your data and then from there
Yep.
you can take it on. And you do wonder how many trusts are at that stage where they just want to just put the brakes on and stop. And
Yeah.
money comes in each year and then it just gets siphoned out because everyone's calling.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you break that cycle. Never mind the sustainability part that's come in. We haven't even got to that yet. They've got this
Yeah.
state.
But they should go hand in hand though, Dan.
Yeah,
Sorry, they should go hand in hand. If we've got that asset information. So I mean I done exactly that. When I started at the trust, like I say, it literally was, hit the ground running because we had all these schools joining. And then it got to a point, it's like we just need to stop right now and review where we are because we are just continually chasing our tail and I didn't feel that I was getting best value of public money ultimately, to repair our schools or carry out maintenance on our schools. So, I'm lucky that our trust invested in those surveys to get that information to me. And it's like gold dust, this information. But it doesn't just stop with doing it once. I mean, you can't do it once and think that's you done for the next 20 years. I mean, these are, 1, 3, 5 year, I mean, under 5 year surveys. But, things change. So, you need to be on top of that. But you could probably maybe do it in a program. But in line with that, with the sustainability, decarb information, the two should go hand in hand. So
yeah,
whatever you do, so we're doing roofs this year, right?
yeah,
We'd love to put PVs on them, we can't. But our roofs have been upgraded to the point that when we can put PVs on, they can take it. So what you don't want to do is go back and have to undo all of that. So whatever we're doing with our sustainability journey is working with our capital program now. So we try and use the best materials that we can, sustainable materials. Everything comes down to cost, I guess, to a point. But we can't be empowering our young people by going against what is actually right to do, and looking for sustainable ways of working, and through the whole supply chain that is as well, isn't it? It isn't just the material that you're using. So the same, but data is everything. Without that, I don't know how you could have a sustainability plan or a forward maintenance plan without having all of that key information to start with. You are otherwise just knee jerk reacting to everyday occurrences which could be
yeah.
prevented.
And this is why it's information like this. And I know it sounds crazy, but there's going to be somebody somewhere looking after 15, 20 schools, firefighting every day, and they're
Mm,
just like,
yep.
how do I get out? They don't want to ask, like you said, they don't want to ask the person who's running the place because they'll think that they don't know what they're doing, and then they don't
Mm,
have a huge network of people to go. What they do, but sometimes it's just, and that's why I think that having links. Do you work with other like estate managers around you? I know we've got this session, this thought leader set group, but do you speak to other estate managers and
yeah.
vent with each other?
So, I mean, I'm part of the Northeast Schools and Academies
The
Forum,
these, yeah,
and I chair the estate subgroup for that, and that is useful, So we have it happens every 3 months, I think it is. But, talk for everybody, and then we break off and we have a talk, relevant. Someone comes in perhaps, or an open discussion, and they are key. But I think also is not being. I mean, I often get emails. We'll send, who's had this furniture before? Has anyone ordered? Garden benches or whatever. There'll be weird and wacky things, and we all come from such different environments. Even us as estate managers come from different backgrounds. Some are very finance led, some are very energy led, some are more building surveying led. So we're all very different, and I think it's crucial that you lean on each other, to do that. But I don't think we should undervalue the input from our site staff either. They're in those buildings day in, day out, and they probably hold more knowledge than even they might realise. Do you know what I mean? So it's important to keep those dialogues open. I have no problem of saying I don't know. I really don't
Yeah.
know, or can someone help me? Because we can't know everything. Every day, is something new to learn, isn't there? So I think, the thought leaders network, the NESAF, these are all really good things to do, and I know they take time, and people will say that, and I'll say that I'm so busy, but I think spending even just, a couple of hours, half a day, whatever it is, to be able to have that dialogue and even know that you're not the only one who's struggling with 300 emails a day and and no money to fix things and people coming at you in all directions. Just having that support network, I think, is good in its own without that other knowledge sharing. And it's amazing how much of it does overlap. You go, oh, okay, I done that a few months ago. Have you tried such and such? You've got to speak to each other, I think. Yeah, really
Yeah,
important too.
and sometimes that network between each other is a stronger one because like I put on the talking about sometimes you can go to events, you can be spoken
Mm,
to all day long, and you come out of it after 9 hours of being pitched to, and you go, I don't know which way to start, and
yeah,
is it the right thing to do? And actually, though, if another estate manager listens to you, they'll go, hang on, Tracey's implementing it, which means I can do it. And that's why I think you guys coming together, you've probably taken all the information in the world you could ever take, and it's all just spread between each other's minds, and you're all
between
doing
us all.
stuff, and yeah, and it's just sharing it. Which, just moving on to just the next part then, because this is a real nice link between what you do, construction, everything like that. Mental health and welfare within the construction industry is a huge topic and something where stress is just massive. We have unfortunate incidents where
Yeah.
people are taking, decisions which are just not for them the right path, but just devastating and ending lives and things like that. Stress within your work, estate management, is it there? Is it? I can imagine it is. And is
I
there
I
people
think
within
so.
your
I
group?
mean, I think everyone is under so much pressure. I'm saying two of us with an estate of 30 schools is hard. We'd be lying if we said it wasn't, and it is hard. I mean, I'll admit that a year or ago I struggled badly. It's just a complete overwhelm, absolute overwhelm, and most schools trusts now have employee assistance programs of some sort. Is really important to reach out to those, but knowing how to signpost. And we've certainly had within our caretaking team, we have good relationships with our site staff. Martin goes around regularly. We do regular check-ins, and we do feel people are quite open, and we can signpost, or spot things. But it's one to watch, isn't it? Continually. I mean, I'm always on. For Martin, my assistant estate manager, of managing his hours that he's working, and you can't. We've got schools the same. We've got works going on over the summer, and a caretaker said, it doesn't matter what time they work till. I'll just come back and lock up afterwards. I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have to manage the keys another way. You finish at that time, you need your rest, and a break away from work. So I think it's up to us to lead that, to ensure that, we do manage, our own staff and site staff. I mean, they don't, I'm not their line manager, but I still feel a responsibility of overseeing what they do because they can get overwhelmed. And let's face it, be completely honest, they're not paid enough money to deal with some of the day-to-day stresses and the health and safety and the compliance and all of that that's on them. And people do get overwhelmed with the stress. So I think it's up to us to keep an eye out, and ensure we do our best to signpost and support, and just recognize. I mean, there's been some, LinkedIn, I've seen some awful stories. I think guy said lost three friends, last week. It's just awful, isn't it? And you think, and it isn't always obvious. That's the problem, isn't it? People are very good, very good. I know when I struggled, I was very good at hiding it till one day it would just it just all came out. There was no more I could do. When I spoke to someone, I had my little therapy, it's often not work is probably the last thing that's caused it, isn't it? There's lots of other things going on around that we all cover. Is a difficult subject, and not something that everyone's willing to be open and honest about, I guess, of how they're feeling. It depends on what sector, but I think it's important that we continually say there's support out there, resources out there. Check in. Are you okay? Do you need any help? I think it's really important. And then saying that
Yeah.
again, that network. If you're close with somebody, you might be able to spot the signs. Martin, you're saying, are you okay today? You don't seem yourself. It's important to have those conversations, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and we're speaking a lot at the moment. We've got a bit of initiative group being formed between
Hmm.
me and Constructing Excellence and East Riding Council, and we're trying to look at methods because they understand within the tender process, people are buying jobs, literally buying jobs. But then when they bought
Yeah,
them, guess who suffers? The contractors, the
absolutely.
roofers. And
Yeah,
and that's then on our sites, and you don't realise that actually the stress that's been put on these guys because they've bought a
yeah,
job from you, and that then that creates a whole new conversation. Then
yeah,
that then becomes a case of I've got three prices. Why is this one £50,000 cheaper? All of a
yeah.
sudden, you don't know what that might trigger down the line,
No.
and that is
But
a
it's
whole new
challenging that as well, though, isn't it,
oh,
Dan? It's
very,
challenging. If you
very.
get something that doesn't look right in a tender, it needs to be challenged. How are you delivering it like that? What does your well-being practice look like? What support is in for your staff? Are you making them work 14-hour shifts and got to condense 3 weeks work
Yeah,
into one? We have to be on that as well, don't we? To call it out if we see it.
yeah, it absolutely does. Just on topics, construction topics, there's loads of amazing seminars within construction. Do you
Mm.
get involved with construction events outside of education? And is it something that
So
you'd recommend for us
CIOB.
to do? Yep, so of course you said CIOB. Yep.
Yeah, so CIOB do quite a lot of seminars and things, as do RICS, so the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors do, but they're I think because HSE even have seminars and things on. I think most of the ones I do, to be honest, are probably within the education sector now, but still with a topic that could I suppose it's tailored towards the education sector, whereas really the topic could be sitting anywhere. Do you know what I mean? But then there's lots of I'm desperately trying to think of I think he might be called the CPD guy. So I belong to I register for that and go to that. So they put on CPDs regularly on some great topics around construction. So I don't know, drainage systems, roofing systems, things to learn that are maybe only 45 minutes, but it again just opens you up to go, oh, I didn't know that was a thing or on the market. So it enables you to have a conversation about something different, a new way of working, perhaps, or rather than traditional way of doing something. So I think it's called the CPD guy. We'll have to look that up, but definitely shout out for him because it costs nothing, and you can watch them on demand. So they're always really good. I think it's important to stay up to date. I mean, certainly for my CIOB as part of I have to do that, meet so many
Yes.
CPD hours every year, and all about ethical practice as well. So it isn't even just a building product and stuff. It's like how are we delivering this ethically? How is it produced? Where do we sit with that? So I think you need to stay up to date as much as possible. There's always something to learn. But again, it's time, isn't it? But I think you
It is,
should
I know.
you
It
know
is.
block out some time in your day in a week to say, well, I'm going to do an hour of CPD in that time. So we'll do our little blocks in our calendar, I'm sure, time blocking. But actually, on a Friday afternoon, this is what I do. So I have no meetings in at that point, but I'm going to do some learning at this point because just to stay up to date with things and enable conversations of things. Oh, have you seen that? Have you thought about that? Yeah, I need to do it.
No, it's absolutely true. Um, Look, just going into the final part, what's the plan for the trust then? How many more? Are you bringing more schools in? Is it? Do we know yet? Or are you just kind of saying? So I
So,
put a funny meme out the other day. I don't know if you'd seen it, where it was like when the trust take on 7 more schools without telling the estates team, and they're like,
oh. So, I mean, we'll know. We do have more to join. I don't know the dates of those yet, but we've got 30 at the moment. I think we'll be at 30 for a while. And to be honest, it's quite nice now because we're getting, our central contracts in place, our procedures and processes are getting better. So, we're in a much better place to what we were even a year ago with information that we have and the way that we're delivering things. Can we improve all the time? We can improve. There's always things. I think, I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that. Obviously resources hold you back on that, or even the expertise in the room, to be able to deliver on some things you want to do. But no, at the moment we're quite happy with our 30. I think I'm quite happy with the 30.
"Yeah, it's
I
no."
don't want any more just yet.
I was gonna say you'll need a bigger team. You're an absolutely big team, but look, it's a very nice insight into your world, Tracey. There's a lot going on. I think this is what people don't see. Is
Hmm.
the whole purpose of construction is the whole part that that you've just spoken about, and that is just a very small nugget I can imagine in what we could talk about. We could talk for
It is.
absolutely days on stuff, but yes, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you very much, Dan.